The council chamber stretched 300 meters across, a vast circle of polished stone that had witnessed 1,000 years of galactic decisions. 47 species sat in their designated sections, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some stood on legs, others floated in specialized chambers. But today all of them focused on the same thing, the three humans standing in the center of the room. Stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his gray suit perfectly pressed despite the 14-hour journey to reach this station. His dark hair showed hints of silver at the temples, and his brown eyes remained calm as they swept across the assembled aliens. To his left stood Lisa Grant, a woman in her 30s with hair pulled back in a tight bun, holding a data tablet against her chest. On his right, Commander Peter Hayes wore his dress uniform, the dark blue fabric crisp with military precision. His jaw was set, his posture rigid. The magistrate rose from his seat high above the floor. His species resembled tall mantis-like beings with 4 arms and compound eyes that glittered in the chamber's artificial light. When he spoke, his voice emerged from a translator device that rendered his clicking sounds into standard galactic common tongue. "The Council has reviewed the charges against humanity," the magistrate said. His upper arms gestured while his lower ones remained still. 3 violations of pre-contact protocols with developing species, 17 incidents of aggressive territorial expansion, unauthorized weapons development that violates the Accords, and a pattern of behavior that shows disregard for established galactic law. Listened without expression. Lisa's fingers tightened slightly on her tablet, but she made no sound. Peter's eyes narrowed, but he kept his gaze fixed on a point above the magistrate's head. A representative stood next, her blue-scaled skin reflecting the lights. Her species looked almost reptilian, with graceful movements and large golden eyes. "Ambassador, you have presented your defense. We acknowledge that some situations involved cultural misunderstandings. However, the pattern cannot be ignored. Humanity has been part of the galactic community for only 30 years, yet you have caused more disruption than species who have been members for centuries." Nodded slowly. "We acknowledge our mistakes. We have acted hastily in some situations. Our species is young to space travel, and we have much to learn about coexisting with others." The magistrate's compound eyes seemed to focus more intently on. "Your words are measured, Ambassador, but words are not enough. The Council has reached a decision." The chamber fell silent. Even the soft humming of environmental systems seemed to fade. Species who needed to breathe held their breath, those who did not simply waited. "Earth and all human colonies are hereby removed from the galactic community," the magistrate announced. "All trade agreements are terminated effective immediately. All diplomatic relations are severed. Human vessels are granted 60 standard days to depart from all Council space. After that period, any human presence will be considered an incursion and dealt with accordingly." Several alien representatives shifted in their seats. A few looked uncomfortable. Others nodded in agreement. The ambassador, a being made of crystalline structures that refracted light in rainbow patterns, actually looked away from the humans. "This is Exile," the magistrate continued. "Humanity will have no contact with Council species, no trade, no communication, no shared research or cultural exchange. You will return to your own space and remain there. The Council will revisit this decision in no less than 50 standard years, assuming humanity demonstrates the maturity required for galactic citizenship." The magistrate paused, clearly expecting a response. The chamber waited. In the gallery above, observers from various species leaned forward. Surely the humans would protest. They would argue. They would threaten or beg or demand reconsideration. That was what happened in situations like this. Species fought against such judgments. Took a slow breath. He looked up at the magistrate, then let his gaze travel across the assembled representatives. His expression remained neutral, neither angry nor pleading. When he spoke, his voice was clear and steady. "We understand," said. "Humanity will comply immediately." The silence that followed was deeper than before. The magistrate's translator made a small clicking sound, as if uncertain it had properly conveyed the human's words. Several representatives exchanged glances with their neighbors. "You have no objection?" a Hask representative asked, his tentacles curling with confusion. "No appeal." Shook his head once. "The Council has made its decision. We respect that decision. We will remove all human presence from Council space within the provided." Lisa stepped forward slightly and gave a small bow to the assembly. We request only that the 60-day period be honored so that we may arrange transportation and settle our affairs properly. We have citizens on 17 different council worlds and 42 mixed species stations. We need time to organize their departure. That is acceptable, the magistrate said, though his tone suggested surprise. The 60-day grace period stands. Peter's hand moved in a crisp salute, the gesture sharp and military. Then he dropped his hand back to his side and waited. Clasped his hands in front of him and gave a formal bow, the kind used in diplomatic ceremonies. The human delegation thanks the Council for their time and consideration. We wish the galactic community peace and prosperity. He turned on his heel, his movements precise. Lisa and Peter turned with him. Together, the three humans walked toward the chamber's exit. Their footsteps echoed in the vast space. Not one of them looked back. The gallery erupted in confused murmuring. Representatives leaned toward each other, speaking in hushed tones. The magistrate remained standing, his four arms held in a posture that suggested uncertainty among his kind. As the doors closed behind the human delegation, a young aide spoke to her supervisor. I expected them to fight, to argue. Her supervisor, an older male with darker scales, watched the closed doors. So did everyone else. That's what makes this disturbing. In the hallway beyond, maintained his steady pace. Lisa walked beside him, her tablet now held loosely at her side. Peter kept his military bearing but allowed himself a long exhale. That went better than expected, Lisa said quietly. His lips curved in something that was not quite a smile. They expected anger. They expected us to give them a reason to feel justified in their decision. And now, Peter asked. Now we go home, said. We close our embassies, we recall our citizens, we do exactly what they asked us to do. They reached their ship docked at the station's diplomatic berth. The vessel was small by military standards but elegant, designed for diplomatic missions. The crew waited at attention as their ambassadors boarded. Paused at the airlock and looked back down the corridor toward the council chamber. Send a message to Earth. Tell them to begin immediate recall protocols. All humans in council space are to return home within 60 days. No exceptions. What about the mixed families? Lisa asked. The humans married to aliens. They choose, said. They can return to Earth with their families or they can stay and renounce their citizenship. We won't force anyone. Ship detached from the station 6 hours later. As it turned toward human space, its sensors recorded something interesting. Across the station, aliens had gathered at viewports to watch it leave. Their expressions varied by species, but many shared a common element, confusion mixed with something that might have been regret. 3 weeks passed like water through open fingers. Across the galaxy, humans began to move. They packed their belongings, closed their businesses, and prepared for the long journey home. And they did it all with a silence that unsettled everyone who watched. On Prime, the third largest trading hub in council space, Danny Foster stood in the cargo bay of his engineering workshop. The human man was 32 years old, with sandy brown hair and grease permanently stained under his fingernails. He had lived on this planet for 8 years, longer than anywhere else in his adult life. His wife Ra stood beside him, her blue scales catching the afternoon light streaming through the tall windows. She wrapped one of her arms around his waist, the gesture familiar despite the difference in their species. You could stay, Danny said quietly. It was not the first time he had offered. You have family here, your sister, your parents, this is your home. Ra made a sound that her species used for gentle disagreement. My home is where you are. I chose you, Danny Foster. I knew what that meant. He turned to look at her, studying the golden eyes that had first captured his attention in a crowded market 9 years ago. Earth is different. The gravity is heavier. The air is thicker. And we will be isolated. No contact with your family for decades, maybe longer. Then we will write letters and save them, she said. When the isolation ends, I will have years of words to share with them, but I will not spend those years without you. Danny pulled her closer, careful of the equipment they had been packing. Around them, the workshop showed signs of systematic dismantling. Tools hung in their proper places, waiting for the new owner. Equipment sat in marked crates. Everything was organized, everything was ready. A merchant named or entered the bay, his scales darker than Ra's, marking him as from a different region. He looked around the space with obvious sadness. I still cannot believe you are leaving. Or said. This workshop has fixed half the machinery in the industrial district. Who will maintain the old equipment when you are gone? Danny gestured to the organized workspace. I've written detailed manuals for every system I've worked on. They're in the computer network, free for anyone to access. I've also trained your nephew and 2 others on the basics. They're not experts yet, but they'll learn. Or's head tilted, a gesture of respect among his people. You did not have to do that. You are being exiled. No one would blame you for leaving problems behind. That's not who we are, Danny said simply. Or at least that's not who we want to be. Across the city, Merchant Captain Hayes stood in her trading post for the last time. The space had been her life for 6 years. Shelves that once held goods from a dozen worlds now stood empty. The counter where she had negotiated hundreds of deals was clean and bare. A line of aliens waited outside, each coming to settle final accounts. Worked through them methodically, checking her records against theirs, transferring credits, closing contracts. Some transactions resulted in her owing money. Others showed debts owed to her. She treated both exactly the same, fair and precise. An elderly Hask merchant approached, his tentacles moving slowly with age. He had bought textiles from for years. I still owe you for the last shipment, he said, shame coloring his translated words. 2,000 credits, but my accounts are low this season. I cannot pay the full amount before you leave. Checked her tablet, then smiled at him. According to my records, you prepaid for 3 shipments 2 years ago during that cold season when you had extra funds. This shipment was covered by that advance. We're settled. The Hask's tentacles curled in surprise. But that was for different goods. The prices have changed since then. A credit is a credit, said. You paid in advance, I delivered goods, we're square. She knew she was lying. The math did not actually work that way. But the old merchant had always been honest with her, and she would not leave him in debt. After he left, grateful and confused, she made a note in her records to adjust her own accounts. She would take the loss herself. By evening, the trading post was empty, locked the door and left the keys with the station administrator. As she walked toward the docking bay where the transport ship waited, she passed shops and stalls she had known for years. Aliens watched her go. Some called out farewells, others simply stared. At the spaceport, the transport ship Horizon's Hope waited. It was a civilian vessel, hastily converted to carry passengers instead of cargo. 3,000 humans were scheduled to depart on it, along with several hundred aliens who had chosen to follow their human families to Earth. The boarding process was orderly. Families moved up the ramps with their belongings. Children held their parents' hands. Elderly humans were helped by younger ones. Mixed species couples stayed close together, the alien partners carrying documentation that would grant them refugee status on Earth. A crowd had gathered to watch. Thousands of aliens filled the observation areas, pressing against the barriers for a better view. Their presence puzzled the human security officers managing the boarding. This was an exile, a punishment. Why would so many come to watch? A news reporter named stood with her camera operator, recording everything. Her species had been among those voting for exile, yet now she found herself troubled by what she witnessed. This is reporting from Prime Spaceport, she said into her microphone. Behind me, the human transport Horizon's Hope prepares for departure. This is the 7th mass exodus ship to leave our world this week. Estimates suggest that within 30 days, no humans will remain on Prime. A population that numbered 40,000 just months ago will be reduced to 0. She paused, watching a human woman help an elderly up the boarding ramp. The old alien moved slowly, clearly struggling with the decision to leave her. The human woman, perhaps her daughter-in-law, spoke to her gently and carried her bags. What strikes this reporter most, continued, is not the departure itself but the manner of it. There have been no protests, no angry speeches, no sabotage or destruction. Humans are simply leaving. They settle their debts, transfer their business contracts, and board their ships. They say goodbye to friends and with courtesy and respect. They leave behind instruction manuals and training guides. It is the most organized and peaceful mass exodus in recorded council history. Her camera operator panned across the crowd of watching aliens. Many looked sad. Some appeared confused. A few seemed angry, though whether at the council or the humans was unclear. The last humans boarded the ship. The ramps retracted. The docking clamps released with metallic clangs that echoed through the spaceport. The Horizon's Hope's engines powered up, a low rumble that grew to a roar. Inside the ship, Danny and Ra found their assigned cabin. It was small, barely large enough for the narrow bunk and tiny storage locker. But it was theirs. Ra sat on the bunk and looked at her husband. "Are you afraid?" she asked. Danny considered the question. "No, sad maybe. I liked it here, but Earth is beautiful too. You'll see mountains that touch the clouds, oceans that stretch beyond the horizon, and my family will love you." "Will they accept me?" "They'll accept you because I love you," Danny said. "That's all that matters to them." The ship lifted from the planet's surface. In the observation areas, aliens watched it rise into the sky, growing smaller until it was just another point of light among the stars. Then it was gone. Finished her report. The silence of this departure may be louder than any protest could have been. This reporter wonders if the council considered that possibility when they issued their verdict. From Prime, this is. She turned off her microphone and stood watching the empty patch of sky where the ship had been. Her camera operator began packing equipment. "Do you think we made a mistake?" he asked her. Did not answer immediately. Around them, the crowd was dispersing. But many aliens moved slowly, reluctantly, as if leaving the spaceport meant accepting a reality they were not ready to face. "I think," she finally said, "that we will find out, but by then it may be too late to fix it." Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated itself. On 42 stations and 17 worlds, humans packed and departed. They left behind empty shops and quiet laboratories. They left behind friends and colleagues and business partners. And everywhere they went, aliens watched them go with growing unease. The exile had been meant as punishment. But as the days passed and the humans simply accepted it without complaint, some began to wonder if perhaps humanity was teaching the Council a different kind of lesson entirely. 6 months passed. The galaxy adjusted to life without humans, though the adjustment proved harder than anyone had expected. Magistrative stood in his office high above the capital city, reviewing reports on his data screen. His 4 arms moved in patterns of frustration, a gesture his species used when dealing with persistent problems. The numbers before him painted a troubling picture. 3 major research facilities in his sector were behind schedule. The plasma containment project had stalled completely. The atmospheric processor development was moving at half the expected pace. The new ship engine design had encountered problems that the remaining engineers could not solve. All 3 projects had one thing in common. They had relied heavily on human researchers and engineers. His assistant entered the office, a younger with bright green coloring that indicated his youth. "Magistrate, the Council on Station Crossroads has sent another maintenance request. The older sections are experiencing power fluctuations." "Have they hired new maintenance contractors?" asked, though he already suspected the answer. "They have tried, Magistrate, but the older systems were installed 60 years ago before current standards. The human contractors who maintained them understood the outdated technology. The new contractors are struggling to learn." Dismissed his assistant and returned to his reports. The pattern was everywhere once he started looking for it. Trade routes that had run smoothly for years were now experiencing delays and complications. The humans had served as intermediaries between species who did not trust each other directly. Without them, old tensions resurfaced. On Station Crossroads, Administrator dealt with the immediate consequences of the human departure. The station hung in neutral space, a meeting point for a dozen different species. It was old, built before modern construction standards, and it required constant maintenance. The lights flickered in his office. They had been flickering for 3 days now. The new maintenance crew promised they were working on it, but the problem persisted. A section of the station's older residential area had lost heat yesterday. The crew had restored it, but only after 14 hours of work that should have taken 2. The human contractors would have fixed it in the time it took to locate the problem. Pulled up personnel records from before the exile. A human engineer named Gary had maintained the older sections for 7 years. His reports were detailed, his repairs were efficient, and he had trained several younger humans in the station's unique systems. But Gary was gone now, along with his knowledge and his training. The new contractors were competent with modern systems, but baffled by the older technology. Made a note to request funding for a complete station upgrade. Then he looked at the budget and realized such an upgrade would cost more than the station could afford. The cheaper option had been keeping the old systems running. The humans had made that possible. In the Empire, Ambassador El faced a different problem. The border dispute with the Hask Collective had grown worse over the past 2 months. Both sides claimed the same 3-star systems. Both sides insisted their claim was legitimate. Under normal circumstances, this would have led to war. The and the Hask had fought 3 major conflicts in the past 2 centuries. But for the last 15 years, they had maintained an uneasy peace. That peace had been mediated by human diplomats. Ambassador's predecessor, a woman named Helen Wright, had brokered the current treaty. She had spent months traveling between both sides, finding compromise where none seemed possible. Now the treaty was fraying. Small incidents at the border escalated because no one was there to calm tensions. Military ships from both sides patrolled the disputed systems, weapons ready. El had tried to negotiate directly with the Hask, but centuries of mistrust made every conversation difficult. The Hask heard insults in statements that El meant as conciliation. El interpreted Hask caution as aggression. Helen Wright had understood both species. She had known how to translate not just words but intentions. She had known when to push and when to wait. Without her or someone like her, the situation degraded daily. On Earth, life continued in a different way. Stood in his new office in Geneva, looking out at the mountains in the distance. He now served as Director of External Affairs, though there were no external affairs to direct. His job was to prepare for the day when isolation ended. Lisa Grant entered his office carrying a tablet. She had been promoted to Deputy Director, and she took her role seriously. The colony worlds are reporting successful integration of the returning population, she said. Mars has expanded its habitats to accommodate the extra 50,000 people. The belt stations are running at full capacity. Europa's underwater cities have actually benefited from the additional engineers and scientists. Nodded and morale. Lisa hesitated. Mixed. Some people are angry about the exile. They feel punished for mistakes they did not make. Others see it as an opportunity. Without council restrictions, our research and development have accelerated. We've made more progress in ship engine design in 6 months than in the previous 5 years. Because we're not limited by council technology sharing agreements, said. Exactly, we can experiment freely. Some of our scientists are actually grateful for the isolation. Turned from the window to face her, and the ones who are angry. They're starting to understand the bigger picture, Lisa said carefully. The council expected us to rage against the exile. They expected threats or attempts to circumvent the isolation. Instead, we accepted it calmly and focused on our own development. That silence is its own message. The message being that we don't need them as much as they thought we did, maybe as much as they need us. His expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. We shouldn't think that way. Pride was part of what got us exiled in the first place. I'm not talking about pride, Lisa said. I'm talking about reality. We're receiving messages, encrypted, unofficial, but from contacts in council space. They're asking questions, requesting information. Some are even expressing regret about the vote. 2. Minor officials mostly, some scientists, a few military officers. None of them can say anything publicly, but privately they're reconsidering. Sat down at his desk, processing this information. Keep monitoring the messages, but don't respond yet. We wait. For what? For them to realize what they've lost, for the consequences to become undeniable, and for the right moment. On Prime, continued to report on the aftermath of the human departure. Her series on the Exodus had gained significant attention across council space. Today, she stood in the industrial district where Danny Foster's workshop had been. The new owner, an engineer named Or's nephew, worked at a machine that had broken down 3 days ago. He had Danny's detailed manuals pulled up on his screen, but the repair was not going well. The problem, explained to the camera, is that the manual can tell me what to do, but it cannot tell me why. Danny Foster understood these machines at a level beyond just following instructions. He knew how they thought, if machines can be said to think. Watched struggle with a connection that should have been simple. Do you regret that the humans left? Looked directly at the camera. I regret that we made them leave. There is a difference. The broadcast reached millions of viewers across council space. In the comments sections of news sites, debates erupted. Some aliens defended the exile as necessary. Others questioned whether the punishment fit the crimes. And slowly, a new sentiment began to emerge. Perhaps humanity's silence was more damning than any angry protest could have been. In the council chambers, the magistrate called a private session to discuss the growing concerns. Representatives gathered without the usual publicity and ceremony. This was a meeting they did not want publicized. Several sectors are reporting economic difficulties related to the human departure, the magistrate said. Trade routes are disrupted. Research projects are delayed. Some stations are experiencing maintenance issues. A HASC representative spoke, his tentacles moving in agitation. These are temporary problems. We will adapt. We managed perfectly well before humans joined the council. Did we? The representative who had voted for Exile now sounded uncertain. Or have we forgotten what that was like? The humans have been part of the galactic community for 30 years. An entire generation has grown up with them as neighbors and colleagues. We made the right decision, the HASC insisted. Humanity was too aggressive, too reckless. They needed to learn restraint. They are showing remarkable restraint right now, the ambassador pointed out. They accepted exile without argument. They departed peacefully. They left behind knowledge and training. If our goal was to teach them maturity, perhaps they have learned the lesson. But perhaps we are learning one too. The magistrate raised a hand for silence. We will not revisit the decision now. The exile stands for the declared period, but we will monitor the situation and adjust as necessary. The meeting ended without resolution, but something had changed. The absolute certainty that had characterized the exile vote was beginning to crack. The distress signal came from the edge of council space, from a small colony called. The message was brief and chaotic, cutting off mid-transmission. But the words that came through were enough to send alarms through every council military headquarters. Unknown hostiles, dozens of ships, coordinated attack pattern. They're not responding to hails, they're just destroying everything. We need help, we need. Then silence. Commander of the Defense Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the data streaming in from the border region. His scales, normally a calm blue, had darkened with stress to almost purple. Around him, his crew worked rapidly, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. 3 more colonies have gone silent, his communications officer reported. And the mining station at N, all within the last 4 hours. What do we know about the attackers? Asked. His tactical officer brought up images on the main screen. The ships were unlike anything in council records. They moved in tight formations, dozens at a time, coordinating their attacks with precision that suggested hive mind intelligence. Their hulls were organic-looking, almost like they had been grown rather than built. We're calling them the tactical officer said. Initial reports suggest they're some kind of swarm species. Each ship acts independently but also as part of a larger whole. They hit fast, overwhelming defensive positions with sheer numbers, then strip the colony of resources before moving on. Studied the attack patterns. Standard Council defensive tactics relied on establishing strong points and coordinating overlapping fields of fire. But they did not attack strong points. They flowed around them like water, hitting weak spots simultaneously from multiple directions. Send word to Council Command, ordered. We need reinforcements, and we need them now. The emergency council session convened 12 hours later. Representatives filled the chamber, but the usual order and dignity were absent. People spoke over each other. Voices rose in argument and fear. The magistrate struggled to maintain control. Order, we must have order. The ambassador's crystalline structure flashed with agitated colors. Order, 7 colonies have been destroyed in less than 2 days. They are advancing into our space and our defenses are failing. We need action, not order. A HASC military commander presented his analysis to the assembly. His tentacles moved in patterns of deep concern as he spoke. The tactics are designed to counter traditional council defensive strategies. They avoid direct confrontation with our strongest forces. Instead, they spread out and attack multiple targets simultaneously. By the time we respond to one attack, they have already moved to 3 others. Then we adapt our tactics, the magistrate said. We have fought wars before, we can fight this one. With respect, magistrate, we cannot adapt quickly enough. Our military doctrines have been developed over centuries. They work against conventional threats, but they are not conventional. We need new thinking, and we need it immediately. The chamber fell into troubled silence. Several representatives looked at each other, a shared thought passing between them without words. Finally, the representative who had questioned the Exile spoke. There is one species we know that excels at unconventional tactics, one species that has consistently demonstrated the ability to think creatively in military situations. No, the Hask representative said immediately. You cannot be suggesting. The humans, the continued. Before the Exile, their military advisors helped us resolve the border conflicts with the. They saw solutions that none of our strategists had considered. The magistrate's forearms moved in a gesture of rejection. The Exile is in effect. We cannot simply reverse it because we face a difficult situation. Then we do not reverse it, the ambassador said. We request assistance. There is a difference. Pride, another representative snapped. You're worried about pride while colonies burn. The argument continued for hours. Some representatives insisted that asking the exiled humans for help would show weakness. Others argued that refusing help out of pride would be even worse. The chamber divided along old political lines, with neither side willing to compromise. Meanwhile, the advanced, 2 more colonies fell. A mining operation was destroyed. A Hask patrol fleet engaged the enemy and was decimated, losing 5 ships for every vessel they destroyed. On Earth, Commander Peter Hayes sat in the military command center deep beneath Geneva. His officers monitored transmissions from Council space with careful attention. The encryption was good, but not good enough to keep out human intelligence services that had been listening since the Exile began. Peter watched the tactical displays showing the advance. His fingers drummed on the table, a habit he had when thinking through complex problems. They're using modified swarm tactics, he said to his second-in-command, Colonel Baker. Similar to the old Wolfpack submarine strategies, but 3-dimensional and with greater coordination. The Council ships are trying to create fixed defensive lines, but you can't hold a line against an enemy that flows like liquid. Nodded, we could counter it. Mobile rapid response groups instead of static defenses. Let the enemy spread out, then hit their separated elements with concentrated force. Exactly, Peter said. But they're not thinking that way. They're trying to apply old solutions to a new problem. An officer approached Peter's station. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Council space. It's encrypted using old diplomatic codes. The signature indicates it's from Commander of the Defense Fleet. Peter's eyebrows rose. I remember him, good commander, clever tactical mind. He paused. He's not authorized to contact us. The Exile forbids it. Yes, sir. Should we ignore the transmission? Peter considered for a long moment, then he shook his head. No, let's see what he has to say. The message was audio only and his translated voice sounded strained. Commander Hayes, I hope this message reaches you. I am violating orders by sending it, but the situation is desperate. You have seen the attacks. You know what they are doing. Our defensive strategies are failing. We need help. I'm not asking as a representative of the Council. I'm asking as one military officer to another. People are dying. Colonies are being destroyed. If you have insights that could help us, please share them. Peter listened to the message 3 times. Then he turned to, get on the line and prepare a tactical analysis of the patterns. If we're going to help, we need to be ready. In Geneva, received Peter's call within minutes. He listened to his message, his expression thoughtful. He's going around the Council, Lisa said. She had been in his office when the call came through. This is personal initiative, not official request. Which means if we respond, we're also violating the Exile terms, said. Does that matter at this point? Peter asked over the communication link. The Council exiled us, but people are dying, not politicians, not the ones who voted for exile, regular people on those colonies, families, children. Closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, his decision was clear in their depths. Prepare a tactical analysis and recommendations, he said. I'll draft a message to the Council, not to the magistrate himself. We'll do this properly or not at all. And if the Council refuses the help, Lisa asked. Then at least we offered, said. But I don't think they will refuse. Pride has limits when survival is at stake. He sat at his desk and began composing the message. It took him an hour to get the tone right. Not gloating, not angry. Just a simple offer of assistance from one civilization to another in a time of crisis. The message was brief. Magistrate, we have monitored the incursion into Council space. We understand the tactical challenges you face. Earth offers military advisory assistance and strategic coordination support, no conditions attached. The Exile can remain in effect. We simply want to help save lives. We await your response." He signed it with his full title and sent it through official channels. Then he, Peter, and Lisa waited. The response came 6 hours later. 6 hours during which another colony fell and they advanced deeper into Council territory. When the message arrived, it was brief and formal, but the undercurrent of desperation was clear. Earth vessels are granted temporary passage into Council space for the purposes of providing military advisory support. The Exile remains in effect, but is suspended for the duration of the current crisis. We await your arrival at the prime staging area. Read the message twice, then looked at Peter on the screen. "How quickly can you mobilize?" "The carrier Enterprise is ready now," Peter said. "We've been preparing since we heard about the first attacks. We can launch within the hour." "Then go," said. "And Peter, show them what we can do." 3 human ships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Council space. The carrier Enterprise led the formation, a vessel designed for rapid deployment and tactical coordination. Behind it came a support ship carrying civilian volunteers and technical specialists. The diplomatic vessel Meridian traveled third, smaller but significant in its symbolism. Commander Peter Hayes stood on the Enterprise's bridge, watching the tactical displays update with current intelligence from Council forces. 8 months away from this space felt like both a lifetime and yesterday. His crew worked with quiet efficiency around him, professionals who knew their jobs and did them well. "We're being hailed by the Defense Fleet," his communications officer reported. "Put them through." Commander's face appeared on the screen. His scales showed the dark purple of extreme stress, but relief flooded his features when he saw Peter. "Commander Hayes, I did not know if you would actually come." "You asked for help," Peter said simply. "We came. Show me what we're dealing with." The tactical briefing lasted 2 hours. Peter's officers integrated Council intelligence into their systems, building a comprehensive picture of the threat. The swarm species had destroyed 11 colonies now. Their advance had slowed slightly as Council forces consolidated, but they were far from stopped. Peter studied the patterns of attack and defense. His mind worked through the problem the way he had been trained, looking for the weakness in what seemed like overwhelming force. "They're coordinated but not centralized," he said finally. "Each swarm unit acts independently within a larger strategy. That's their strength, but also their vulnerability. They can't quickly adapt to changing conditions because there's no central command making decisions." "We have tried to exploit that," said, "but our forces are spread too thin trying to defend multiple locations." "Because you're defending," Peter said. "Stop defending, start hunting." On the support ship, Danny Foster worked alongside alien engineers he had not seen in 8 months. The reunion had been awkward at first. These were beings he had considered friends, members of the civilization that had exiled his species. But professionalism overcame discomfort quickly. There was work to do. "The Council weapons are effective against ships," Danny explained to a group of technicians. "But your targeting systems are optimized for single-target acquisition. Against swarm tactics, you need area effect targeting and predictive firing solutions." He pulled up a modified targeting algorithm on his portable computer. "This adjusts your weapons to fire at predicted positions rather than current positions. The move in mathematical patterns. Once you understand the pattern, you can hit them before they complete their maneuvers." A young engineer named, or's nephew, stared at the equations. "This is the same principle you used for the maintenance prediction algorithms you left us." Danny smiled slightly. "Same idea, different application. Patterns are patterns, whether in machine maintenance or battle tactics." On the Meridian, sat across from Magistrate in a private meeting room. His compound eyes reflected the soft lighting, making his expression hard to read by human standards. But his body language spoke clearly enough. The proud being who had pronounced exile 8 months ago now carried the weight of decisions that had cost thousands of lives. "I want to apologize," began. Raised a hand gently. "We're not here for apologies. We're here because people need help. The past can wait." "But it cannot be ignored," insisted. "The exile was my proposal. I convinced others to support it. I believed humanity needed to learn restraint and maturity. Instead, you demonstrated both by accepting our judgment without protest." We did need to learn restraint, said. The exile gave us time to reflect on our mistakes. We were too aggressive in our expansion, too quick to assume we understood situations we did not. The council was right about that. His forearms moved in a gesture of acknowledgement. Perhaps, but we also need to acknowledge our own failure. We assumed you would rage against the exile. We prepared for threats and attempts to circumvent the isolation. Instead, you simply left and focused on your own development. Your silence has been more powerful than any argument you could have made. Leaned back in his chair. The silence wasn't a strategy. We genuinely had nothing to say that would have changed the council's mind. So we focused on what we could control, our own actions and our own growth. And now you return to help the civilization that cast you out. Now we return to help people who need it, corrected. There's a difference. Over the next 2 weeks, the tide of battle shifted. Human tactical innovations combined with council military strength created a force that could not easily overcome. Peter's strategy of mobile hunting groups worked exactly as predicted. Instead of waiting for the to attack and then responding, council ships formed rapid response teams that tracked and engaged enemy units before they could consolidate. The swarm tactics that had been so effective against static defenses became a liability against forces that refused to stay in one place. Danny's targeting algorithms increased the accuracy of council weapons by 40%. Ships that had been struggling to hit fast-moving vessels now destroyed them with devastating efficiency. And throughout it all, humans and aliens worked side by side. The 8-month separation fading as shared purpose took priority over past grievances. The decisive battle came at the border, where a massive force attempted to break through into the core systems. Commander led the Council fleet. Commander Hayes coordinated the tactical response from the Enterprise, and together, their forces executed a maneuver that would be studied in military academies for decades. The Council ships formed a loose formation that appeared vulnerable. Following their pattern of attacking weak points, swarmed toward the gaps. But the gaps were a trap. As they committed their forces, human and Council ships that had been hiding behind nearby asteroids emerged and struck from multiple directions simultaneously. They found themselves surrounded and outmaneuvered. Their coordination, so effective in offensive operations, became chaos in defensive fighting. The battle lasted 6 hours and ended with the force destroyed and the survivors retreating back beyond Council space. 3 days after the victory, the Council convened in emergency session. This time, the mood was different. Representatives spoke with careful consideration rather than angry certainty. Stood once again in the center of the great chamber. But now he was flanked by Peter Hayes in his uniform and Lisa Grant with her ever-present tablet. And around the chamber's edges, alien officers and engineers who had worked with humans during the crisis watched the proceedings with interest. The magistrate rose to speak. His posture was formal but lacked the rigid certainty it had held during the Exile hearing. Ambassador, the Council recognizes that humanity's assistance was vital in repelling the threat. Countless lives were saved due to your tactical innovations and the skill of your personnel. The Council wishes to express its gratitude. Nodded but said nothing, he waited. The question before us now, the magistrate continued, is what relationship humanity should have with the Council moving forward. Several members have proposed formally ending the exile and reinstating Earth as a full member of the galactic community. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Some species nodded in agreement, others looked uncertain. Stepped forward. Magistrate, with respect, I believe that would be premature. Silence fell. That was not the response anyone had expected. You question your own reinstatement? The magistrate asked. I question whether simply revering the exile addresses the underlying issues, said. The Council exiled humanity because we were too aggressive, too quick to act without considering consequences. That criticism had merit. The last 8 months have given us time to reflect and mature, but full reinstatement would send the wrong message. What message would you prefer? The ambassador asked. Took a breath. The Council and humanity both made mistakes. The exile was justified in some ways, harsh in others. Rather than pretend it did not happen, I propose we acknowledge it and learn from it. Grant humanity provisional status. Allow limited diplomatic and trade relations under careful monitoring. Include us in security discussions, but not in internal Council governance. and review this status in 5 years to assess whether we have truly learned the lessons we needed to learn. The chamber erupted in discussion. Several representatives looked surprised, others nodded thoughtfully. The representative stood. You are proposing a middle path, not full exile, not full membership, but something in between. Exactly, said. Relationships that break and immediately reunite often fall into the same patterns that caused the break. Relationships that take time to rebuild properly tend to be stronger. Humanity wants to be part of the galactic community, but we want to earn that place rather than simply reclaim it. The magistrate's forearms moved in what might have been approval. This is unexpectedly wise. The council will deliberate and vote. The deliberation took 6 hours. When the vote finally came, it was nearly unanimous. Humanity would be granted provisional status with regular reviews. Trade could resume but would be monitored. Diplomatic exchanges would restart on a limited basis, and security cooperation would continue given its obvious success. Accepted the decision with the same calm he had shown when accepting exile. The human delegation thanks the Council for this opportunity to rebuild trust. We will work to prove ourselves worthy of full membership when the time comes. 2 weeks later, the Meridian prepared to depart from Prime, stood in the observation deck, watching the planet below. Lisa joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the ship's small galley. Do you think we'll mess it up again? She asked, handing him a cup. Took a sip and considered the question. Probably. Humans make mistakes. The Council makes mistakes. Every species does. But this time, we're all approaching the relationship with more humility and more understanding. Is that enough? It's a start, said, and sometimes a start is all you need. On Prime, Danny and Ra stood in front of the building that had once housed his workshop. The new owner had hung a sign offering engineering services, but he had also mounted a small plaque beside the door. The plaque read, "Founded by Danny Foster, human engineer. May his teaching guide our work." Ross squeezed her husband's hand. He remembered you. He remembered what I tried to teach him, Danny said. That's better. Across the galaxy, humans and aliens began the slow process of rebuilding relationships that had been broken. Some reunions were joyful, others were awkward. All of them required patience and effort. But the foundation was stronger now. Both sides had learned lessons about pride and humility, about the cost of isolation and the value of cooperation. The exile had been meant as punishment, but it had become something more, an opportunity for growth that neither humans nor aliens had expected. And when the ships departed and the diplomatic channels reopened, and the traders began moving between worlds once again, they carried with them a deeper understanding than they had possessed before. The galaxy was large enough for many species, but it was smaller and better when those species worked together. That lesson, learned through 8 months of separation and crisis, would shape the relationship between humanity and the Council for generations to come.